This is Europa Universalis Price of Power. An absolute massive board game. As you can see, just about fits onto my big table here. Below it is the Axis and Allies Global 40 board. So you can see just how huge the game is. But we haven't stopped there. It comes in a big box. The dog doesn't come with the base game, but you can probably get a deluxe version of it. And over here you have the player mats, counters, counter trays and mission cards for all the bits and bobs you need. 4 sets in the base game, 2 more come in the expansion, or 6 sets from the get-go if you have the deluxe version of this game that has a learning curve so steep you could brew tea. Before we get into it, may I mention that I make these videos in aid of a charity called Cure Parkinson's. You can guess what they're trying to do. There is a link to them below this video, one in the banner on the channel page. If you happen to have a spare dollar, euro, yen, yak, or a ducat you could send to them, I'm sure that they would appreciate it. And yes, I did just call them ducats. They're not ducats. Ducat sounds like something you get from Camden Market, me old son. They're ducats. Add an I to them, they become Ducatis, current MotoGP world champions and champions-elect for this year too. Let's get into this video proper. It's not going to be a review video, it's actually going to be more of a expectation video. So what do you expect from a box that is that tall? It is so tall you can hide the A4 size books behind it. The quality of the paper that they've used initially in the rulebook, probably one of the best quality rulebooks I've come across. Good quality, thick, glossy paper, very thick stock on the player raid cards, and you get half a dozen of those in the deluxe version, so every player can have one of them. There's also various different player raid marking which are the rounds that are in there, so on and so forth. Yes, this whole thing reeks of quality. And the quality doesn't actually end just with the rulebook and the player raids. When you come down to the player mats that you got here, this, as I said, is the deluxe version, so I got 6 of them. But on the deluxe version, these player mats, these trays where you keep all your counters that are in play or coming into play, should we say, they are rebated into here. I believe on the standard version you just have flat cardboard ones, and the cardboard that's also in this edition, it's fairly thick stock. No problem at all. I can't assume that the standard edition will be a nightmare to play with. I'm sure it's absolutely perfectly serviceable. With the deluxe version, you get wooden cubes and wooden counters and a number of cardboard counters. I believe that in the standard version, it's all cardboard, but again, perfectly serviceable. I'm absolutely sure of that from seeing the quality they've put into the deluxe edition, and there is some crossover into the standard edition. It's going to work really nicely for you. Have no worries about which version you buy, apart from the size of the board differences and the extra 2 powers that you get with the deluxe version. It's all going to work nicely for you. The other thing we can talk about with quality of components is the board itself. This section here on the western side of the map and the distant realms or distant continents, whichever you want to call them, they come as part of the base game. The eastern side of the map comes in the deluxe version, and you can buy an expansion for it along with those 2 extra powers. But there is a slight thing that for me, because I didn't have a choice as to which version I bought, it left me with a quandary as to whether I would have been happy with the base game. With this particular joint here, this is where the base game board ends, and as you can see, it just drops off. It just the end of the world just stops, whereas the world otherwise continues around and is finished off with a nice little border. It's not something that's going to be a deal breaker for many people, but if you've got a little obsessiveness like me, then you'll probably want to have the complete game to complete the map, rather than it just stopping sharply like that. It's a very minor niggle, and it won't affect anybody other than me, I shouldn't think. The other thing that I got with this game, which doesn't come with either edition as standard, is the metal coin pack. I didn't get a choice again because I got the whole thing on a deal from a guy up in London, and I wouldn't have paid out the money for these metal coins in the first place, but having got hold of these, man, they are cool. They really are cool. You get cardboard ones in the standard edition, and the deluxe edition is standard. They're cardboard ones, and they're perfectly serviceable. I've got them still in the box there, unpunched, but actually these are just different. If you have an opportunity to buy the coins and you think you're going to play this game quite a few times, then invest in them, because they do seem somehow to add to the fun. They've got a weightiness, a sound to them, a feel to them. So if you feel like it, then invest the extra money on these coins for sure. As I said, I got this whole game as a deal from a guy up in London, and it wasn't cheap. Let's just say that we agreed a price that neither of us liked. That's how we knew the deal was fair, and I think that's partly what's inspired this video, because I believe the guy had a little bit of muddled thinking when he purchased the game, because he bought himself the deluxe version, 6-player, no problem at all with that, extra bot packs so he can play 5 bot players, and the metal coins, great, but he also bought himself 2 sets of dice. Now, you don't need 2 sets of dice. There isn't that much dice rolling involved in the combat. If you've got 2 players and you don't want to reach across the table, certainly, but why would you buy extra bot packs so you can play the whole thing 6 players versus yourself and have a spare set of dice to give to the player that's not there? So I think the guy's thinking was possibly a little bit muddled, and it's what has inspired this expectation video. So let's start off with the rulebook itself. Now, I've photocopied mine into a folder. 48 pages of great quality stock, but one of my things, I don't like mucking up my nice rulebooks. I'd rather muck up a copy, and you will be going backwards and forwards through that rulebook so much that I think I would actually recommend this time, apart from my own paranoia, I'd recommend you have another copy of this rulebook that you can get mucky, because you will be going backwards and forwards through this so many times. There's also some player aids that come with the game. There's 6 of these, double-sided. They are quite good. I mean, the stock is great, but I've downloaded from BGG, someone else's version. They've got a couple of trifold sheets on here that have more information on it, double-sided. They are an in-between step from what you get with the game and the rulebook. And believe me, this rulebook will be your best friend and your worst nightmare at times. It reminds me of Empire of the Sun, where you have multiple entries for certain rules. You have a starting one, a middle one, an end one, and you don't know initially where to look or even how to look at it. But at the back of it, there is a very good index. It's superb. It gets you to where you want to be most of the time without too many difficulties. But you will be flicking backwards and forwards through several sections, because whilst there's lots of generic rules that apply to all the powers in many situations, there are certain little fiddly bits that it's going to take you a while to remember all those. And it's taken me a long time to remember them. There's also a certain language you have to learn. Just give me a second to go and find part of this new language. Here's one. This is, again, photocopied from the rulebook itself. It's got loads of symbols on it, and these are the symbols which is part of the foreign language that's in the book, and it's used to replace certain words and short phrases. Imperial authority, trade note, DNPR, dynamic non-player around. These things are in here because when you try to scan through your rulebook and find these words amongst a jumble of words, and it's 3 columns on A4 sheets, it's going to be hard to spot these single words. So replacing the words and the phrases that you're after with a symbol is a very clever idea. It takes a while to pick up on the language, but once you do, the whole thing it turns out to be a lot less daunting than you first thought it was going to be. The only slight difficulty that you found, or I found at first, was the negative language it was written in, and by that I mean certain sentences in there will start off with a negative clause. It would be if the player can't do this, and the non-player can do that, then you can't do, and it's, why didn't you just write down, you can do this, you can do that in a list? It would be much easier to work their way through. But I do understand it's because there's lots of clauses and caveats that are based in certain parts of the systems that run through. But once you get used to the language, it's still a little bit slow to read through, but once you gain the idea, you gain the momentum of the game, it is not too terrible. So in terms of what I was expecting from this game, and I did a little bit of research beforehand by watching Callendale on YouTube. He did 100 hours of video of this game beforehand. Well done you, sir. How you managed to do that, I do not know. He played through all the 4 ages, and in his usual rambling fashion. And there's another guy called, I think it was Callas Mar, that's played, I'm not sure if it's the whole way through. I've watched part of his series. He's played quite a lot extensively using the bots there. And it's been quite interesting from both of those guys, learning and picking up little bits of, let's say, technique, but ideas around ways that you can play this game, because it's multivarious that you can play it. And well, what I was expecting, back to me, was a brain burner of a game, one where you would be exploring the board and developing your society and economic strategy and perhaps some warfare. And so far, the game has not disappointed me. If you are a wargamer only, this may not be the game for you. If you want to, big handfuls of dice and start throwing B-52s and tanks and big ships at a problem, no, I don't think this game is going to be for you. But if you want a game that's going to challenge you in different perspectives, using fewer dice rolls and more thinking time, this could yet be the game that you're after. Let me just look up something I was going to mention. Okay, here we go. Inside the front cover on page number 2, it quite clearly says, we recommend you focus on learning the rules in chapters 4 to 8 initially. Now, chapter 4 is after the setup, and it's got the sequence of play. Chapter 5 says basic actions. Chapter 6 says action cards. 7 is governing a play around, and number 8 is ideas. Chapter 9 is warfare. I come from a predominantly wargaming background, lots of Axis and Allies, and Civil War, Bull Run, France 44, Third Reich, Pacific War. I've got loads of war games over there. I just keep reeling them off for you if you want to. But the first thing that I did when it suggested you concentrate on things that aren't going to war is I wanted to go to war. I wanted to throw some dice and battle and do things. And chapter 9, the warfare section says, start of it, when diplomacy won't satisfy your ambitions, warfare might be your next step. Well, warfare was my first step. Diplomacy, etc., went out the window. I went to the wrong step first. And my ambitions, it affected the first game detrimentally. I had 6 nations on war fittings, and well, just no. My restart, I made better choices in terms of economy, diplomacy, and alliances, etc. So if you're expecting a massive global size or Europe size war game, then no. I said this game's probably not going to be the right one for you. But if you're expecting a game that can take you on an adventure and tell you a story, and you're prepared to put in the work with such in-depth rules, this could yet be an absolute cracker. What this game mostly reminds me of, because someone did say to me, is it like Risk on steroids? And the only way that you can compare this to Risk is that they both come in boxes. There are elements of Axis and Allies, small bit, because you're rolling dice at each other. It's more akin to perhaps Machiavelli, if you remember that game, Civilization, if you know that game, and very, very oddly, one of the impressions that I've got from this is a game called Labyrinth War on Terror. It's also apparently, that game is similar to Twilight Struggle, which you may even be more familiar with. And the reason why I say that is, even though they're completely different eras and different genres, what you are doing in Labyrinth and with this is you're making a small adjustment each time. You are putting influence in here, you're putting power in there, you're threatening your build-up, you are manoeuvring your pieces around, and then once in a while, click bang, everything kicks off and you've made a massive change all at once. And then you're back to your, I wouldn't say shilly-shallying, but you are manoeuvring, you're tinkering, you're adjusting, you're getting things in place. It is not a very fast-paced game, but each player turns can be quite short. And so, looking at the rule book just slightly here, as you can see, it's the 3 column stuff. You can see all the symbols down there. It does help you to read it, but you can imagine that this is quite a hefty tome to work through at times. And I have said that the symbols are going to help you out working through the book, but even with all that goes on within this game, it took me approximately 25 hours to get through the first turn from unboxing and setting things up. And a lot of that time was reading rules, trying to interpret things, and obviously thinking about what powers can do. Because powers can do very many different things throughout the game. Just take, say, the purple faction here. In this case, they are playing as Poland. If you look at their player board, they have towns, they have vassals, they have admin, diplomatic and military power. They've got different types of rulers and leaders you can slide into place. They have an economy to manage and a religion to manage. They have manpower, which can be shifted up into your armies and your navies with artillery, cavalry, infantry, light ships, heavy ships, galleys. You have mercenary you can hire. There is so many different things that you can do with each individual power, and they have action cards that they can use, which will cause various different things. Let's not spoil any surprises for you. But even aside from all that, we can carry on to there with the purple side. They have individual missions that they can do, and one mission will lead on to another. And when you've done one mission, you can choose another. So again, it's various ways that an individual power is going to take its story through this game. It doesn't stop there. This is a game that never seems to stop there. Apart from all those mission cards and how you choose to play the games in that respect, we also have events that come up throughout the game. Powers can choose to play or not play certain events. Some events will be left over undone. Certain events can be stolen from the country it was intended for. That again will twist the game around in a different direction. There's also research. You can research different ideas, giving small bonuses, subtle differences throughout this game. Let's not try to point you in the wrong direction. When I said 25 hours for my 25 hours for my first playthrough of it, that was, I was reading the rules, trying to work things out. I perhaps should have sat down beforehand and read the rules more in depth before jumping into that game. But they are so deep and in depth, same thing, deep and in depth, that I wanted to get the thing onto the table to try to understand some of the concepts I was reading about. It is a lot easier to be moving the pieces around and seeing how it works on the board than imagining it. So that did slow down my learning time. And obviously, when I did my restart, because you can't go off on it, well, you can, but it wasn't working out nicely on a war footing, everybody. I did a restart, and the first turn then was about 5 hours. It got me through a heck of a lot faster, 4 or 5 hours. And now I'm getting turns down, playing all 6 powers by myself, to about 2 hours per turn. I may be able to shorten it with a bit more experience and ideas of how I want the nation to go in a direction, and possibly even writing it down as to what actually I want to go this way, because I keep forgetting and having to try to remember where I was and catching back up again. So I'd imagine that if you had 3, 4, 5, 6 players that were more experienced in the game and could actually double up on reading and knowing rules, I would suspect you can get a turn done in in an hour tops. No problem at all with that. There's 2 scenario books when you got the deluxe version or the expanded version. I keep calling it deluxe, it's expanded version as well. The first one comes in with up to 4 players. The second one brings in your 6 players. There's 7 scenarios in the expanded version of it, and all the scenarios themselves, they can be tweaked for fewer or more players within its own design, and there's bot players that can come into it and be added into it, and there's bot rules as well and solo rules in another separate booklet, so quite a lot to look at. But also what I wanted us to show you was in the initial book here, the scenarios 1 book in here, it's got a piece about modifying a scenario, so you can change things around multivarious ways, and you've got designing scenarios from scratch. So again, it's that variability that comes in. You just go and grab something. These are the initial setup cards that the powers get for playing in scenarios, and when you want to mix and match things in and change around the way you do things, you've got 2 sides of the board setting up on I think it's 1444 and 1681, don't quote me on that, but it's 2 different setups on the boards, and you have other powers that come into it. Apart from England, you have Polish Commonwealth, Muscovy, Sweden, Netherlands, Papal States, Brandenburg, Venice. More powers in these setup cards and scenarios than the 6 powers you have in the base game. I do hear people that have said that they wouldn't mind having extra sets of players to come into that, so you can maybe have 8 or 10 powers on the board at one point in time. Well, there is the dynamic NPRs that cover that to a small degree, and that is dynamic non-player rounds. There's player rounds, non-player rounds, and dynamic ones. If you get the game, you'll understand where that one's going to. But for me, as generally, I'm a solo player for most of my games, although I do have mates come around and throw dice at different things. I think that would be a little bit too confusing for my own preferences. There's also a thing with, let me just turn you around, let me show you something. There's also a thing with this game. You've got these cubes here. These are monarch cubes, and that they get used for dictating how much power or influence you have within these parts of your player boards, and they will go on to the main board as well and dictate the influence you have in the game. They're also used as markers, and we've got any on the board at the moment, to tell you something's happened within the game, and certain parts are being used on cards. So you are in slightly limited supply with these things, and there has been some comments about that. The suggestion by some people is there isn't enough of those monarch cubes to give the powers lots of things to do, and is constricting within the game. I get where you're coming from. Me personally, I find that the limited number of cubes that you have in here gives you some hard choices to make. I really want to do that. I really want to concentrate on that kind of area for this player. It means that I can't concentrate on that area of that game. Well, that just means, will that tactic work out better for that particular power? If you've got a free reign of not necessarily unlimited supply, but a greater supply of those monarch cubes, my personal thought is that it would give you too much freedom. Like, say, Axis and Allies, you get a problem when you're playing that game, you buy loads of infantry, throw it at the problem, and the problem will or won't disappear. With this, however, I think it's different. I think I like the harder choices and the restrictions that it gives me. Other players won't like that, and I'm sure that someone's going to work out a rock and roll method of using other ways of recording things on those cards fairly easily, and maybe even extra sets of cubes getting chunked up and shipped out on eBay or something like that. But as I said to you, I think it's the variability on this game which particularly captures me. I'm keen to explore how the Spain will get on playing a mainly exploration type of game, going down to the South Americas and discovering Chile and whatever else it's going to be. And with these different various mixes of countries and powers that you can bring into it, that to me The variability is going to give this game longevity. I mean, I could be wrong. I could hate this game in 10 minutes, but I don't think so. I think I'm going to be playing this game for a number of years to come, and bringing in all my childish enthusiasm with it. So that's it. If you think you like this game, check out videos of people playing it and get as much information as you can, because it's not a cheap game to buy. And I wouldn't want you to think that that I'm trying to sell you this game, because I get nothing from the manufacturers. This is just my own total ideas about what I expected from the game. It's met my expectations. Even though I'm predominantly a war gamer, I also like adventure games and fairly cerebral games where you're taking your time slowly working out the best situations to be in, and you do get to throw some dice once in a while. So that's it. Thanks enough for watching. Until next time, be cool.